Welcome back, guys, to Battleground Stories. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Before delving deeper, you need to understand this well. In December 1989, deep in the remote jungles of Panama, 4 soldiers entered a valley in search of answers. What they found there, some things should never be found. The military will tell you that Operation Just Cause was a success. A clean occupation, minimal casualties, mission accomplished. But some files were never mentioned. Officially, these missions never happened. Soldiers erased from the lists as if they never existed. If you dig deep enough, you'll find some reports from that period. Strange reports, communications from empty zones. I was one of 4 soldiers. I feel something pulling me back. The forest, the valley, figures hidden in the darkness, perfectly arranged. They are still there. They continue to wait, and they are no longer alone. The rain hit like gravel against the Huey's skin, every drop loud enough to feel through the frame. I sat in the troop bay, rifle between my knees, watching the jungle roll beneath us in dark green waves. The canopy was so thick you couldn't see ground, just treetops stretching toward the horizon, broken only by the occasional scar of a logging road or river bend. Panama in December 1989. The air smelled like kerosene and wet vegetation, a mix that stuck in your throat and never quite left. We were 4 days into Operation Just Cause. Noriega was somewhere in the bush, hiding in safe houses his loyalists had built deep in the interior. Our mission wasn't to find him. We were looking for a downed aircraft, a reconnaissance Huey that went silent 2 nights prior while surveying suspected PDF strongholds near the Darien Gap. Last transmission came in broken, engine failure, coordinates logged, then nothing. Lieutenant Jack Morin sat across from me, map spread across his lap, earpiece pressed tight against the rotor noise. He was young for an officer, maybe 26, but he carried himself like someone who'd seen more than his share. His jaw was set, eyes fixed on something beyond the window. Next to him was Staff Sergeant David Hensley, call sign Hawk. He'd done 2 tours before this, Desert Storm vet, the kind of NCO who didn't talk much but saw everything. You could tell by the way he scanned the jungle, slow and methodical, like he was reading a language the rest of us couldn't. Specialist Cole Riggs sat to my left, chewing gum with his mouth half open, fingers tapping against his M16. He was 22, fresh out of AIT, still carried pictures of his girlfriend folded in his helmet band. This was his first deployment. You could see it in how he gripped his weapon, how his eyes darted every time the chopper banked hard. I'm Corporal Lewis Grant. I've been in 5 years, seen Haiti, seen Honduras. This wasn't my first jungle, but something about Panama felt different. Maybe it was the density of it all, the way the green seemed to swallow light. Or maybe it was the silence that came after the radio went dead. That kind of silence makes you listen harder, and the harder you listen, the more you hear things that aren't there. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. 5 minutes to LZ. Wind's picking up. Gonna be a rough drop. Morin folded his map and secured it inside his vest. He looked at each of us, one by one, then nodded. That was all. No speech, no pep talk, just acknowledgement that we were about to step into something uncertain. The Huey banked left, dropping altitude fast. My stomach lifted. Through the open bay door, I could see a clearing ahead. Not natural. The trees were sheared off at odd angles, burnt in places. Crash site. The skids touched down hard, mud spraying up against the fuselage. Before the rotors even settled, we were out, boots sinking into soft earth, rifles up, scanning the perimeter. The jungle closed in around us immediately. The noise of the Huey faded as it lifted off, leaving only the sound of rain and our own breathing. Morin raised his fist. We stopped, listened. The air was thick with moisture, every breath heavy. I could smell burnt fuel now, faint but present, mixing with the rot of decaying vegetation. "Spread out," Morin said quietly. 15-meter intervals. "Riggs, you're on point with me. Grant, Hawk, secure the flanks." We moved in formation, slow and deliberate. The ground was uneven, roots tangled like tripwires, mud sucking at our boots with every step. I kept my eyes forward, watching the shadows between the trees. Visibility was maybe 20 meters before the jungle turned into a wall of green. Every sound felt amplified, the drip of water off leaves, the distant call of a howler monkey, the creak of branches shifting in the wind. "Eyes on the wreck," Riggs whispered over comms. I moved up and saw it. The Huey sat in a small depression, nose down, tail rotor sheared clean off. The fuselage was mostly intact, dented but not torn apart. No fire damage beyond some scorching on the engine cowling. That was the first thing that struck me as wrong. A crash like this should have left more destruction. Fuel should have ignited. The tail boom should have snapped completely. Instead, it looked almost controlled. Morin signaled us to hold position while he and Hawk approached. They circled the wreck, weapons ready, checking for booby traps or unexploded ordnance. I watched the tree line, scanning for movement. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the mist hung low, turning everything beyond 30 meters into vague shapes. "Clear," Hawk called out. We moved in closer. The troop bay doors were open. Inside, the seats were empty. Personal gear was scattered across the floor. Helmets, vests, maps, a canteen still half full, but no bodies, no blood, no sign of the crew. Riggs leaned in, shining his flashlight across the interior. "Where the hell are they?" Morin crouched near the pilot's seat, running his hand along the control panel. "Radio's intact, so's the GPS." He paused, frowning. "Batteries still live." That didn't make sense. If they'd survived the crash, they would have used the radio. Standard procedure. Mayday call, coordinates, status. Instead, there was nothing. Just an empty bird sitting in the mud like a discarded toy. Hawk found something near the tree line. Boot prints. Fresh. Deep impressions in the soft earth, leading away from the wreck. He counted them under his breath. 4 sets. All military issue. Heading southwest. Morin studied the tracks, then looked back at the Huey. "They walked away from this?" "Looks like it," Hawk said, "but they left everything behind." I checked the gear scattered inside. Dog tags on a chain, a wallet with family photos, a cigarette pack, unopened. Nobody leaves that kind of stuff unless they're in a hurry, or unless something made them leave. The rain picked up again, harder this time, drumming against the metal hull. The sound echoed inside the bay, hollow and rhythmic. I noticed something else. Scratches on the interior wall, deep gouges like someone had clawed at the metal. They ran in jagged lines from the seat to the doorframe. I touched them. Fresh. No rust. Recent. "Lieutenant," I said, pointing. Morin came over, studied the marks, but didn't say anything. His jaw tightened. He keyed his radio. "Command, this is Overwatch 2. We've reached the crash site. Aircraft intact. No crew present. Tracks leading southwest. Requesting further instructions." Static. Then a voice, distant and broken by interference. "Copy. Overwatch 2. Continue search. Locate crew. Report findings. Weather deteriorating. Extraction window closing in 6 hours." "Understood." "Out." Morin turned to us. "We follow the tracks. Stay tight. Something about this doesn't sit right." We moved out in column. Hawk on point now, reading the trail. The boot prints were clear for the first 100 meters, then they started to fade. Not because of the rain. The ground here was softer, but the impressions were shallower, like whoever made them was moving lighter, or not moving at all. "Tracks are changing," Hawk said. "Patterns off." I moved up to look. He was right. The stride length was inconsistent. Some prints overlapped others. It looked like they'd doubled back, circled, then continued in the same direction, like they were confused. or searching for something. The jungle thickened as we pushed deeper. Vines hung low, forcing us to duck and weave. The canopy above was so dense that even midday felt like dusk. I checked my watch. 14:30 hours. We had maybe 4 hours of usable light left, less if the storm worsened. Riggs stopped suddenly. "You hear that?" We froze, listened. At first, nothing, just rain and wind. Then I heard it. Faint. A metallic sound. Rhythmic. Like something tapping against metal. It came from ahead, maybe 50 meters out. Morin signaled us to move forward, slow and silent. We advanced in a line, weapons raised. The sound grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. Even intervals. Mechanical. Not natural. We reached a small clearing. In the center sat a tent. Military issue. Camouflage netting draped over the top, stakes driven deep into the mud. The tapping came from a loose section of the netting, caught on a branch, swinging in the wind. Tap, tap, tap. The tent flap was open. Inside, I could see sleeping bags laid out, a field radio, ration boxes stacked neatly, everything organized, everything abandoned. Hawk swept the interior, then stepped back out. No one here. But they set up camp. Recent. Maybe yesterday. Morin checked the radio. Dead. Batteries gone. I knelt near the sleeping bags. They were dry inside, but the ground beneath them was damp. Whoever slept here hadn't stayed long. I found a notebook tucked under one of the packs. I opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, coordinates, times, observations, 21:30 hours, movement detected northwest, no visual confirmation, 21:45 hours, perimeter sensors triggered, thermal scan negative, 2200 hours, sounds from tree line, voices, language unknown, 22:15 hours, relocating camp, need higher ground. The last entry was smudged, like it had been written in a hurry. They're not following us. They're leading us. I showed it to Morin. He read it twice, then looked toward the tree line. Who wrote this? I flipped back through the pages. No name, just entries. The handwriting was clean, steady, not panicked. Whoever it was, they were keeping records like they were trained to do. But that last line, that was different. That was fear. We keep moving, Morin said. Weapons tight. Stay alert. We packed what we could carry and pushed on. The trail was harder to follow now. The rain had washed away most of the prints. We relied on broken branches and disturbed foliage. Hawk moved like a hunter, reading the jungle the way some people read books. Every bent leaf, every snapped twig told him something. The ground began to slope upward. We were climbing into higher terrain, rockier, less vegetation. The trees thinned slightly, letting in more light. I could see the ridge ahead, maybe another 100 meters up. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The jungle was quiet, not normal quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before something happens. No birds, no insects, no movement except the rain. I've been in enough jungles to know that silence like that means one thing. Something big is nearby, something that makes everything else hide. Hold, Morin whispered. We stopped. I scanned the trees, looking for shapes, for movement, for anything. My finger rested on the trigger guard, not inside it, but close. Training kept me steady, but instinct was screaming. Hawk pointed to the left. I followed his gaze. There, maybe 20 meters out, half hidden behind a stand of palms, was a figure, standing still, watching us. It was a man, or it looked like one, dressed in fatigues, same pattern as ours. He didn't move, didn't call out, just stood there, facing us, arms at his sides. Morin raised his hand slowly. U.S. military. Identify yourself. No response. Identify yourself. Louder this time. The figure didn't move, didn't react, just stood there, perfectly still like a statue. Riggs shifted beside me. That's not right. Hawk took a step forward, rifle shouldered. Sir, permission to approach. Morin hesitated, then nodded. Slow. Stay sharp. Hawk moved forward one step at a time, weapon trained on the figure. I kept my eyes on the surrounding jungle. Covering his advance, Riggs and Morin held position. The rain fell harder, drumming against my helmet. I could taste it now, metallic and bitter. Hawk was 10 meters out when the figure moved. Not toward him, just a slight turn of the head. Then it stepped back, disappearing behind the trees. Contact rear! Hawk shouted, spinning around. We all turned. Another figure stood behind us. Same distance, same stance, same uniform. Just watching. What the hell? Riggs breathed. I swept my rifle across the tree line. More shapes. 3, 4, 5 of them. All standing at even intervals, forming a loose circle around us. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They just stood there, watching. Moran's voice was steady but tight. We're moving. Double time. Up the ridge. Go. We didn't run, but we moved fast. Discipline kept us from panicking, but every instinct screamed at us to break and sprint. I kept looking over my shoulder. The figures didn't follow. They just stood there, fading into the mist as we climbed. We reached the ridge 15 minutes later. Breathing hard, mud-caked, adrenaline still pumping. Morin called for a halt. We set up a defensive perimeter, backs to each other, watching every direction. What were those? Riggs asked, voice shaking. People, Hawk said flatly. In our uniforms. They didn't move right, I said. We didn't respond. Didn't I? Morin pulled out his map, trying to get our bearings. Could be PDF, psychological tactics, trying to spook us. Then why didn't they fire? Hawk countered. We were exposed. They had position. No one had an answer for that. The radio crackled. Static, then a voice. Broken, distorted. Watch 2. Return 2. LZ extraction compromised. Moran keyed the mic. Say again, Command. You're breaking up. More static. Then nothing. I checked my watch. 16-20 hours. We had maybe 3 hours before the extraction window closed. If we missed it, we'd be stuck out here overnight, in this jungle, with whatever those things were. We head back to the LZ, Morin decided. Different route. Avoid the valley. We take the high ground along the ridge. We moved out, faster now, less cautious. The rain turned into a downpour, visibility dropping to almost nothing. I kept my hand on Hawk's pack strap, following him by feel as much as sight. The mud was slick, roots treacherous. Riggs slipped twice, catching himself before going down. That's when we found the second camp. It was smaller than the first, just a shelter made from ponchos strung between trees. But inside were more supplies, more rations, another dead radio, and something else. Dog tags, 4 sets, laid out in a neat row on a flat rock. Names I recognized from the missing crew manifest, but the tags were clean. No dirt, no blood, like they'd been placed there deliberately. This is a message, Hawk said quietly. From who? Riggs asked. Morin picked up one of the tags, reading the name. Whoever's out here, they want us to know they have them. Had them, I corrected. These are past tense. We didn't stay long. Every instinct told us to move. The jungle felt like it was closing in, the walls of green pressing tighter with every second. We climbed back onto the ridge and kept moving, following the high ground west toward the original LZ. The rain finally stopped just before dusk. The clouds broke apart, letting through shafts of golden light that cut through the canopy like searchlights. The jungle steamed, moisture rising in thick white columns. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't so wrong. We reached a vantage point overlooking the valley. From here, I could see the crash site below, a dark smudge in the green. Beyond it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. More tents, dozens of them, spread across a wide area, arranged in perfect rows. military precision, and around them, figures, moving slowly, deliberately between the shelters, too many to count. "Jesus," Riggs whispered. "Is that a base?" Morin raised his binoculars. He stared for a long time, then lowered them slowly. His face was pale. "Those aren't PDF." "Then who?" I asked. He handed me the binoculars. "Look at their uniforms." I focused on the nearest group. They wore fatigues. American fatigues. Same pattern as ours. Same gear. But something was off about the way they moved. Too slow. Too synchronized. Like they were on a delay. "They're us," Hawk said quietly. "Or they're wearing our gear." "Where would they get that much?" Riggs asked. No one answered, because the only way to get that many American uniforms was to take them off American soldiers. The light was fading fast now. We had maybe 30 minutes before full dark. Morin made the call. "We're not engaging. We're extracting. Move." We descended the ridge in near darkness, using night vision to navigate. The jungle turned into a green-black maze, every shadow deep enough to hide something. I kept my breathing steady, counting steps to keep pace. 1, 2, 3. The numbers helped. We were 50 meters from the LZ when we heard the helicopters. Not ours. Different sound. Heavier. Black Hawks. Coming in fast from the south. Morin signaled us to hold. We crouched in the underbrush, watching as 3 helicopters swept over the valley, searchlights cutting through the darkness. They circled the crash site, then moved toward the tent camp we'd seen. One of them landed. The others hovered, covering. Through my night vision goggles, I watched figures exit the landed Black Hawk. They moved quickly, efficiently, clearing the area. They weren't PDF. They moved like us, like soldiers. "That's not our extraction," Hawk said. "Then who?" Riggs whispered. Before anyone could answer, my radio crackled. A voice came through, clear and calm. "Overwatch 2, do not approach the LZ. Fall back to secondary extraction point. Grid November 7-3 Bravo. Acknowledge." Morin keyed the mic. "Who is this?" "Authenticate. Authentication code Tango Whiskey 9. Fall back now. You are not cleared for primary LZ." I looked at Morin. He didn't move, didn't speak. That code was classified, current operational. Whoever was transmitting knew things they shouldn't. "Sir?" I prompted. He made a decision. "We fall back. Move to secondary." We turned and headed east, parallel to the valley, keeping high ground. The secondary extraction point was 3 clicks out, near an abandoned airstrip that hadn't been used since the 70s. It would take us an hour to reach it in this terrain. Behind us, the Black Hawks lifted off one by one, sweeping back over the jungle. Their lights passed over us once, maybe 50 meters away, but they didn't stop, didn't investigate, just moved on, heading south toward the border. We pushed hard, ignoring fatigue, ignoring the weight of our gear. The jungle was fully dark now, the only light coming from our night vision goggles and the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi on the trees. It gave everything a sickly green tint, like we were walking through a nightmare. The airstrip appeared suddenly, a long scar of cracked concrete cutting through the trees. Weeds pushed up through the cracks, vines draped across the edges. At the far end sat a rusted hangar, half collapsed. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Morin checked his GPS. "This is it." Set perimeter. We wait for extraction. We spread out, taking positions around the strip. I found cover behind an old oil drum, rifle resting on the rim, scanning the jungle. The night sounds had returned. Crickets, frogs, distant howls, normal sounds. That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. "How long?" Riggs asked over comms. 30 minutes, Morin replied. "Maybe less." I counted the seconds in my head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. It helped pass the time, kept my mind focused. At 200, I heard movement. Not from the jungle, from the hangar. I keyed my mic. Movement, hangar, southwest corner. Everyone tensed. We watched. A figure emerged from the shadows, slow, deliberate. It walked to the center of the airstrip and stopped. It was wearing our uniform. Then another appeared, and another, 6 in total. They formed a line across the strip, facing us, perfectly spaced. None of them carried weapons. None of them spoke. They just stood there. "Lieutenant." Hawk's voice was tight. Morin didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady but strained. "Hold fire. Do not engage unless they advance." The figures didn't advance. They just stood there, unmoving, like they were waiting for something. Then I heard it. The thump of rotor blades. Distant but getting closer. Extraction was inbound. The figures tilted their heads in unison, looking up toward the sound. Then, as one, they turned and walked back into the hangar, disappearing into the darkness. The helicopter came in fast, a Huey with no markings, just bare metal and primer. It touched down hard, rotors never slowing. The crew chief waved us forward urgently. We ran. No looking back. No hesitation. I was the last one to board, pulling myself into the bay as the skids lifted off. I looked down at the airstrip as we climbed. The figures were back, all 6 of them, standing in formation, watching us leave. The crew chief handed Morin a headset. He listened, nodded, then his face went blank. He took off the headset and looked at each of us. "What?" Hawk demanded. Morin hesitated, then said quietly, "That crew we were looking for. Command says they were extracted 3 days ago, before they even went down." "That's impossible," Riggs said. "We saw the wreck. We found their gear." "I know," Morin said, "but according to official records, they were never missing." None of us spoke after that. We just sat in the troop bay, wet and exhausted, watching the jungle fade behind us. The smell of kerosene and rain filled the air. I counted the minutes until we touched down at base, 47. But I kept thinking about those figures, about the camp, about the dog tags laid out like offerings. And I realized something that made my skin crawl. We weren't sent to find them. We were sent so they could find us. We landed at Howard Air Force Base just before midnight. The tarmac was lit up like daylight, flood lamps casting harsh shadows across the concrete. The Huey touched down near a row of hangars, far from the main operations area. That should have been our first clue. As soon as the skids hit ground, 2 Humvees rolled up. No unit markings, no insignia. Just plain olive drab. 4 men stepped out, all wearing standard BDUS, all carrying sidearms. The one in front, a major by his rank, walked straight to Morin. "Lieutenant Morin?" His voice was flat, businesslike. "Yes, sir." "You and your team need to come with us. Debriefing." That was normal procedure after a mission, but something about the way he said it felt wrong. Too quick, too immediate. Usually you got at least an hour to clean up, eat, decompress. Not this time. We loaded into the Humvees without argument. Discipline overrode instinct. Hawk sat across from me, his jaw tight. Riggs kept his eyes down, fingers drumming against his knee. Nobody spoke. The vehicles drove us away from the main base, toward a section I'd never seen before. Chain-link fences, guard posts, buildings with no windows. They took us into a concrete structure that looked more like a bunker than an office. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled like disinfectant and coffee that had been sitting too long. We were separated immediately. Each of us led into different rooms. The room they put me in was small. A metal table, 2 chairs, a mirror on one wall that was obviously two-way glass. I sat down and waited. The chair was cold. Everything was cold. 20 minutes passed, then an hour. I counted the seconds to stay focused. 3,600. That's how many seconds in an hour when you're alone with nothing but your thoughts and the smell of industrial cleaner. The door finally opened. A man walked in carrying a folder. No rank, no name tape, just plain fatigues. He sat down across from me and opened the folder without looking up. Corporal Grant, you were part of the team sent to investigate the downed Huey near Sector 7 Delta. Is that correct? Yes. Tell me what you found. I recounted everything. The crash site, the empty aircraft, the boot prints, the camps, the figures in the jungle, the dog tags, the valley camp with dozens of tents, the secondary extraction. I didn't leave anything out. He wrote notes the entire time. When I finished, he looked up. And these figures you saw, you're certain they were human? They looked human, dressed like us, but they didn't move right, didn't respond to verbal commands. Could they have been local forces, PDF sympathizers using captured gear? Possible, but there were too many of them, and the gear was clean, current issue, not surplus. He nodded slowly, then closed the folder. Corporal Grant, I need you to understand something. The crew you were sent to find was never missing. They returned to base 3 days ago. The helicopter you found was from a training accident 6 months prior. The area you entered is restricted. You were not authorized to be there. I stared at him. That's not possible. We had direct orders from command. Those orders were based on outdated intelligence. The situation was resolved before you deployed. Then why did we find fresh camps, fresh tracks? Why did someone transmit current authentication codes? His expression didn't change. I can't speak to what you think you heard or saw. What I can tell you is that your mission is now classified. You will not discuss it with anyone. Not your unit, not your family, not each other. Do you understand? No, I said. I don't understand. What were those people in the valley? Who were the figures watching us? He stood up. You're dismissed, Corporal. Return to your barracks. Your team will be reassigned within the week. That's it? That's all you're going to tell me? That's all there is to tell. He left. The door closed behind him with a heavy click. I sat there for another few minutes, then got up and walked out. No one stopped me. No one followed. Outside, the night air hit like a wall. Hot, humid, the smell of jet fuel and wet concrete. I found Hawk standing near the fence, smoking a cigarette. He offered me one. I took it even though I didn't smoke. They tell you anything? He asked. Told me to forget it. Said the crew was never missing. He nodded. Same. Said we weren't supposed to be there. Said everything we saw was misidentified. You believe that? He took a long drag, then flicked ash into the dark. I believe someone wants us to believe it. Riggs walked over, looking shaken. They're splitting us up. Different units, different bases, Morans being transferred to Germany. That confirmed what I already suspected. They were scattering us, making sure we couldn't compare notes, couldn't piece together what really happened. What do we do? Riggs asked. Hawk dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. We do what soldiers do. We follow orders and keep our mouths shut, but I could tell from his voice that he didn't mean it. None of us did. We never saw Morin again after that night. He shipped out within 48 hours. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Riggs got sent to South Korea. Hawk went back to Fort Benning. I stayed in Panama for another 3 months, running convoy security along the Pan-American Highway. Normal duty, boring, safe. But I couldn't shake it. Every time I drove past the jungle, I thought about those figures, about the camp in the valley, about the dog tags laid out like grave markers. I started asking questions, quiet questions, careful ones. I found a logistics clerk who'd been tracking helicopter movements during that week. He said there were no authorized flights into Sector 7 Delta. The area had been off limits since the invasion started. Something about contaminated ordnance from a previous conflict. I talked to a signals operator who monitored radio traffic. She said there were ghost transmissions coming from that sector, repeating patterns, automated signals cycling every few hours. When I asked if she reported it, she said she did, and she was told to ignore them. I found a combat engineer who'd been part of the original invasion force. He said they'd discovered something in that valley during the first week. Structures. Underground. Old. Not Spanish colonial old. Older. But before they could investigate, the site was sealed. He didn't know who gave the order. Just that it came from higher up. Way higher up. Every piece of information added another layer. None of it made sense individually, but together, it painted a picture I didn't want to see. 3 months later, I was transferred stateside, Fort Bragg. I got reassigned to a different unit, different MOS. It was presented as a career opportunity, but I knew what it was. They were moving me away from Panama, away from anyone who might ask questions. I tried to contact Hawk once, left messages at his unit. He never called back. I tried to reach Riggs through military channels. His record showed him as non-contactable, not missing, not dead, just unavailable. It was like we'd never existed as a team. Years passed. I got out after my contract ended, went to college, got a job, normal life. But I never stopped thinking about that night, about what we saw, about what they didn't want us to talk about. Then, about 5 years ago, I got an email. No return address, just a subject line. You were right. Inside was a single attachment, a photograph. It showed a valley in Panama, thick jungle, and in the center, barely visible through the canopy, rows of structures, tents, the same ones we'd seen, but the metadata on the photo was dated 2 weeks prior, 5 years after our mission. Whatever was in that valley, it was still there. I tried to trace the email. Dead end. I tried to find out who sent it. Nothing. But a week later, another email came. This one had a document attached. Declassified records from the 1980s. CIA operations in Panama. The documents talked about indigenous groups in the Darien region. Remote tribes that had limited contact with the outside world. But buried in the reports was a footnote. It mentioned anomalous behavior patterns. Tribal members showing up at outposts wearing military uniforms they couldn't have acquired, speaking in languages they shouldn't have known, then disappearing back into the jungle. The reports called it psychological warfare by unknown actors, but the descriptions matched what we'd seen. Figures in American uniforms, silent, watching, waiting. One report, dated 1984, mentioned a forward operating base that went silent. 12 soldiers, all experienced. They stopped reporting for 72 hours. When a recovery team arrived, they found the base intact, supplies untouched, weapons still in the racks, but no soldiers, just their dog tags, laid out in neat rows. I printed everything, filed it away, told myself I was done chasing ghosts, but the emails kept coming, every few months, always anonymous, always with more information, satellite imagery showing thermal signatures in the valley that didn't match human patterns. Audio recordings of radio transmissions from that sector, voices speaking in perfect English, using proper military call signs but saying things that made no sense, requesting supplies for units that didn't exist, reporting objectives that were never assigned. One recording, dated 3 years after our mission, was just 10 seconds long. Static. Then a voice. Overwatch 2, report your position. It was Morin's voice, but Morin had left the military in 1991. He worked as a defense contractor in Germany. I know because I tried to find him. I called his company. They said he was on assignment, overseas. They couldn't give me details. I called again 6 months later. They said he'd resigned. No forwarding contact. I searched for him online. Nothing. No social media. No public records. It was like he'd vanished. Last year, I got one more email. This one had no attachment, just a single line of text. They're not using our uniforms. They're wearing them. I didn't understand what that meant, not at first. Then I remembered something. The scratches inside the crashed Huey, the way they ran from the seats to the door, like someone trying to get out, or like something trying to get in. I thought about the figures we saw, how they stood perfectly still, how they moved in unison, how they wore our gear but didn't act like us. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. What if they weren't impersonating soldiers? What if they were soldiers? Ones who'd gone into that jungle and never came back the same. I started looking into disappearances in Panama during the late 80s and early 90s. Military personnel who went missing during the invasion and the years after. Official records listed them as AWOL, or deserters. But when I cross-referenced the names with the sectors they were last seen in, a pattern emerged. All of them had been in or near Sector 7 Delta. 32 names over a 5-year period, all listed as deserted or missing. None ever found, none ever prosecuted, just erased from active rosters and forgotten. I made a list, started trying to contact families. Most didn't want to talk. A few did. They all said the same thing. Their sons, husbands, brothers had written letters before they disappeared. Normal letters, nothing concerning. Then, the letters stopped. When they inquired, they were told their loved ones had abandoned their posts. Dishonorable discharge. No benefits. No closure. But one mother I spoke to said something that stuck with me. Her son had sent a final letter 2 days before he was listed as missing. He said he was being sent into the jungle to investigate something strange. He didn't give details, just said if anything happened, she should know he didn't run. He wasn't that kind of soldier. She never heard from him again. His name was on a set of dog tags we found in that second camp. I checked the manifest. I was sure of it. I sent all the information I'd gathered to a journalist who specialized in military investigations. He was interested, started digging. Then suddenly, he wasn't. He called me and said he couldn't pursue it. When I asked why, he said he'd been advised that the story wasn't in the public interest. He wouldn't say who advised him. That's when I realized how deep this went. It wasn't just a cover-up of one mission. It was systematic. Decades of people going into that valley and disappearing. Decades of records being scrubbed. Questions being buried. I started having dreams. Not nightmares exactly. Just memories. Walking through the jungle. Seeing those figures. Feeling watched. In the dreams, I always hear the same sound. The rhythmic tap of something metallic. Like the tent netting we found swinging in the wind. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes I wake up and smell diesel, even though I'm nowhere near a base, nowhere near any military equipment. The smell just appears, heavy and thick. Then it fades. Last month, I got a phone call, unknown number. I answered. There was silence for a few seconds, then breathing, then a voice. Corporal Grant. It was Morin. I was sure of it. Same cadence, same tone. Lieutenant? I said. Is that you? More silence. Then the line went dead. I tried to call back. Number disconnected. I tried to trace it. Nothing. But I know what I heard. That was his voice, which means either he's alive and hiding, or someone else is using his voice. Neither option is comforting. I've started carrying my old service pistol. I tell myself it's just for home protection, but really it's because I don't know what I'm protecting myself from. I don't know if those figures we saw in the jungle stayed there. I don't know if they can follow. I don't know what they are, but I know they're real. And I know they're still out there. 2 weeks ago, I was driving home from work. Rural highway. Not much traffic. I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a car behind me. Dark sedan, no plates. It stayed at the same distance for miles. When I turned off the highway, it turned too. I took side roads. Random turns. It followed, always at the same distance. Never closer, never farther. I pulled into a gas station, parked under the lights. The sedan stopped across the street, idling. I couldn't see through the tinted windows. I sat there for 10 minutes, engine running, hand on my pistol, ready. Then the sedan drove away, slow, deliberate, no hurry. I checked the security footage from the gas station later. Friend of mine works there. The sedan was there, but the angle never caught the plates. Never caught the driver, just a dark shape behind the wheel. I don't know if it's connected. Don't know if I'm being paranoid. But I know this. When I close my eyes, I still see those figures standing in formation, still hear that metallic tapping, still smell diesel and wet earth. And I know that whatever's in that valley, it doesn't want to be found, but it's already found us. Last week, I got one more email. No text, just a photograph. It showed a jungle clearing, thick canopy, and in the center, standing alone, was a figure in American fatigues, facing the camera. The face was blurred, but the posture was familiar, the stance, the way the arms hung at the sides. It was me, from behind, in Panama 20 years ago, but I wasn't in that clearing. I never stood alone like that. We stayed in formation, always, which means someone else was there, watching, recording, following. I printed the photo, put it with all the others, locked it in a safe, told myself I was done. No more digging, no more questions. But I know I'm lying to myself, because there's one more thing I need to find out. If those soldiers in the valley never came back, what happens to the ones who saw them? Do we disappear too, eventually? Or do we become them? I check my reflection sometimes, looking for changes, differences, making sure I'm still me. So far, I am. But I know what I'm watching for now. The stillness, the silence, the way those figures moved like they were waiting for something. I'm terrified that one day I'll wake up and feel it, that pull, that need to go back, to walk into that jungle and join the others, to stand in formation and wait, because that's what they were doing. Not hunting, not fighting, just waiting. For us. Or for something else. I keep my service pistol loaded now, one round in the chamber, safety off. If I start feeling that pull, I'll know what to do. Better that than becoming one of them. Better that than standing in the dark, wearing a face that used to be mine. Hawk sent me a letter last month. First contact in 20 years. No return address. Just a postmark from Montana. The letter was short. Grant, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. Not dead. Just gone. I've felt it for a while now. The pull. The need to go back. I've been fighting it, but it's getting stronger. If you feel it too, don't fight it. That's what I did wrong. You can't fight it. You can only delay it. There's something in that valley. Something old. Older than Panama. Older than us. It doesn't kill. It takes. And once it takes you, you don't die. You just change. I don't know how many of us are left. Morin's gone. I'm going. Riggs went 3 years ago. I saw him. In Montana. Standing in the woods near my house. Just standing there. Watching. He looked the same. Exactly the same. Like he hadn't aged a day. That's when I knew. Don't try to find me. Don't try to stop it. Just live your life. Forget Panama. Forget what we saw. But if you can't, if you feel it pulling you back, then go. Don't fight it. It'll happen anyway. And when you see me standing in the jungle, you'll understand. Hawk. I read that letter 10 times. Then I burned it. Watched the paper curl and blacken. Watched the words disappear into ash. But I can't forget them, because I do feel it. Not every day, not even every week, but sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet and still, I feel it. A tug, like something pulling at the edges of my mind, calling me south, back to the jungle, back to the valley. And I know one day I'll go, not because I want to, but because that's what happens. That's what they all did. Morin, Hawk, Riggs 32. 32 others before them. And who knows how many before that. We're all going back, one by one, to join the others, to stand in formation and wait for the next team, for the next soldiers who stumble into that valley looking for answers. And when they see us standing there, wearing our uniforms, carrying our faces, they'll think we're people. They'll think we're soldiers. They'll try to communicate, to identify, to understand. But we won't answer. We won't move. We'll just stand there, waiting, because that's what we do now. That's what we are. I'm writing this down before I forget how, before the pull gets too strong, before I become one of them completely. I'm writing it so someone will know, so the next person who asks questions will have at least one answer. We didn't disappear. We didn't run. We didn't die. We're still there, in the valley, in the jungle, standing in formation, waiting. And if you ever find yourself in Panama, near Sector 7 Delta, and you see figures in the jungle wearing American uniforms, don't approach. Don't try to identify them. Don't ask questions. Just turn around, walk away, and don't look back. Because if you do, you'll see their faces, and you'll recognize them. And then it'll be too late. You'll feel the pull too, and one day, you'll come back. You'll walk into that jungle. You'll take your place in formation, and you'll stand there, still, silent, waiting for the next one.